They trained you to believe the world is something you must chase. But what if the truth is far more dangerous than that? What if the world has always been chasing you? There is a quiet moment, just before everything changes, that most people never notice. It doesn't come with noise or warning. It arrives in the stillness. When you're alone, when the distractions fade, when the illusions begin to crack just enough for something deeper to breathe through. And in that moment, if you listen closely, you'll realize something unsettling. The way you see yourself is not just shaping your life, it is dictating how reality itself responds to you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. He didn't speak about confidence the way self-help books do today. He spoke about perception, power, and control. He knew that the world is not an objective place. It is a stage where perception becomes truth and truth becomes authority. And at the center of that stage is not what you do, but who you believe you are, because people don't respond to your actions first. They respond to the silent message you carry beneath those actions. Imagine walking into a room where no one knows you. You haven't spoken yet. You haven't proven anything, and yet, within seconds, people have already decided what you are worth. Not consciously, not logically, but instinctively. They read the smallest signals, the way you hold your posture, the way your eyes move, the subtle tension in your voice, and all of it points back to one thing: your internal identity. If deep inside you believe you are someone to be ignored, the world will comply. If you believe you are someone to be respected, the world begins to rearrange itself around that belief. This is not magic. It is alignment, and most people never realize they are completely out of sync. They try to change their lives by changing their actions, working harder, speaking louder, forcing confidence. But underneath it all, their self-image remains fractured. And the world senses that fracture immediately. It resists them not because they are incapable, but because they are inconsistent. Machiavelli would say this is where power is lost, not in weakness, but in contradiction. You cannot command the external world while being divided within yourself. Think about that. How many times have you tried to act confident while feeling insecure? How many times have you tried to demand respect while secretly doubting your own worth? Every time you do this, you create a silent conflict, and the world always sides with your deeper belief, not your surface performance. Because performance can be faked, identity cannot. This is why some people seem to move through life effortlessly. Opportunities appear, doors open, people listen, not because they are necessarily smarter or more talented, but because they are internally aligned. Their self-perception is so stable, so unshaken that the world has no choice but to mirror it. They do not chase validation, they generate it. And this is the shift that changes everything. The moment you stop asking, how do I get the world to treat me differently, and start asking, who must I become so that the world has no choice but to respond differently, something begins to move, slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, but then, unmistakably, you start noticing it in the smallest interactions. People who once overlooked you now pause when you speak. Conversations feel different, not because the words changed, but because the weight behind them did. There is a presence now, a quiet authority, and you didn't force it, you didn't demand it, you became it. This is what Machiavelli meant when he implied that perception is power. Not manipulation in the crude sense, but control over the narrative that defines you. Because if you don't define yourself, the world will define you, and it will rarely do so in your favor. But here is the part most people misunderstand. This is not about arrogance. It is not about pretending to be superior. It is about clarity. Clarity so sharp that doubt cannot survive in it. You begin to see yourself not as a collection of past failures, not as the sum of other people's opinions, but as something far more dangerous, a deliberate force, a constructed identity. One that you chose, refined, and committed to so deeply that it becomes real. And once that happens, the game changes. Because now, rejection does not break you, it recalibrates you. Failure does not define you, it informs you. And other people's opinions, they lose their authority entirely. You stop negotiating your worth with the world, you declare it. And here's where it becomes almost unsettling. The world listens, not immediately, not dramatically, but consistently, like gravity. Like something fundamental has shifted beneath your feet. And suddenly, things that once felt impossible begin to feel inevitable, not guaranteed, not easy, but aligned. This is the hidden principle most people spend their entire lives missing. They think success is about adding something, more skills, more effort, more strategy. But often it is about removing something, the internal resistance, the fractured identity, the quiet belief that says, I am not enough, because as long as that belief exists, it will sabotage everything else, silently, relentlessly, until you confront it, until you replace it, until you become something else entirely. And that transformation, it does not happen overnight. It is slow, uncomfortable, sometimes even isolating, because when you change the way you see yourself, you also change the way you relate to the world. Some people will feel it immediately. They will sense the shift, even if they can't explain it. And not all of them will like it, because your new identity disrupts their expectations. It challenges the version of you they were comfortable with, and so they may resist. They may question you. They may even try to pull you back into the old version of yourself. But this is where most people break. They hesitate, they shrink, they return to what is familiar, and in doing so, they lose everything they were becoming. Machiavelli would not be surprised by this. He understood that transformation always creates tension. Power is never given freely. It must be embodied so completely that it cannot be denied. And that requires something most people avoid: consistency. Not in action alone, but in identity. You must think like the person you are becoming before the world confirms it. You must carry yourself like that person before anyone recognizes it. You must believe it before there is proof, because proof does not create belief. Belief creates proof. And when that belief is strong enough, stable enough, undeniable enough, the world begins to reorganize itself around it. People adjust, circumstances shift, opportunities align, not because the universe is favoring you, but because you are finally aligned with yourself. And that is the moment everything changes. It is quiet, almost invisible, but irreversible. You no longer ask for permission to exist the way you choose. You no longer wait for validation to move forward. You become the reference point. And once you reach that state, something strange happens. The things you once chased begin to chase you. Respect, attention, opportunities, even luck itself seems to bend in your direction. But it's not luck, it's alignment. And the world, it has no defense against it, because at its core, reality is not just something you experience. It is something you project. And when that projection becomes clear, stable, and intentional, the reflection has no choice but to match it. That is the game Machiavelli saw. That is the truth most people avoid. And that is the power waiting for you. The moment you decide to think about yourself differently, not as someone trying to become worthy, but as someone who already is and acts accordingly. Because once you see yourself that way, the world doesn't just notice, it rearranges itself. And once the world begins to rearrange itself around you, there is no going back to the person you used to be, not because you physically can't, but because something inside you refuses to shrink again. It starts subtly. You notice that the same situations that once made you anxious now feel almost neutral. The conversations that used to intimidate you no longer carry the same weight. You walk into spaces where you once felt invisible, and instead of searching for approval, you observe, you measure, you decide. And that shift from seeking to deciding is where real power begins. Because the moment you stop asking, do they accept me, and start asking, do I accept this? You flip the entire dynamic. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that power does not belong to the one who is liked the most, but to the one who defines the terms of interaction. And you cannot define those terms if you are constantly adjusting yourself to fit into other people's expectations. That is not influence, that is submission, disguised as social harmony. And the world, whether you realize it or not, can feel the difference. There is a certain energy in a person who is self-contained, not closed off, not arrogant, but complete. Someone who does not leak validation, who does not desperately seek to be understood, who does not bend their identity just to be accepted. And when people encounter that kind of presence, something instinctive happens. They pay attention, not because you demanded it, but because you no longer need it. And that is magnetic. But here's where the transformation deepens and where most people become uncomfortable. Because when you begin to truly see yourself as someone of value, someone who sets the tone instead of reacting to it, you also begin to see the world more clearly. You notice the subtle games people play, the unspoken hierarchies, the invisible negotiations happening in every interaction. You realize that much of what people call confidence is often just performance. Carefully constructed behaviors designed to hide insecurity. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start recognizing who is trying too hard, who is overcompensating, who is seeking approval beneath the surface of their words. And instead of being pulled into that dynamic, you remain steady, grounded, untouched. This is where your perception becomes your shield, because when you no longer internalize other people's insecurities, they lose the ability to control you. And when they lose control, they either respect you or they distance themselves from you. Both outcomes serve you. But this clarity comes with a cost, because the more aligned you become with your true identity, the less tolerance you have for anything that contradicts it. Situations you once accepted now feel suffocating. Relationships that once felt normal now feel imbalanced. Environments that once seemed comfortable now feel limiting, and you are faced with a choice: stay where you are known, or move toward where you are becoming. Most people hesitate here. They try to hold on to both worlds. They attempt to evolve without letting go. But that tension is unsustainable, because growth demands separation. Not from everyone, but from everything that requires you to be less than who you are becoming. Machiavelli would not sugarcoat this. He would tell you that power requires sacrifice. Not in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet, consistent decisions you make every day. The decision to walk away from what diminishes you. The decision to remain silent when speaking would lower your value. The decision to act in alignment with your identity, even when it is uncomfortable, especially when it is uncomfortable, because discomfort is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is a sign you are breaking out of something that once contained you. And the more you lean into that discomfort, the more your identity solidifies, until one day something clicks. You no longer feel like you are trying to be this new version of yourself. You are it, effortlessly, naturally, without performance. And that is when the world responds in ways that feel almost surreal. People begin to treat you differently without being told to. Opportunities appear without being chased. Conversations shift in your favor without manipulation. And, perhaps most importantly, you stop second-guessing yourself. Because the internal conflict is gone. There is no more gap between who you are and how you present yourself. There is only alignment, and alignment is power in its purest form. But even here, there is a final layer that few ever reach. Because once you realize that the world reflects your identity, the question becomes unavoidable. Who are you choosing to be? Not based on your past, not based on your circumstances, but based on your intention. Because identity is not something you discover. It is something you construct, deliberately, consciously, relentlessly. And most people, they leave this to chance. They let their environment shape them. They let their experiences define them. They let other people's opinions mold them, and then they wonder why their life feels out of control. But you are no longer in that position, because now you see the mechanism. Now you understand the principle. Now you know that the way you think about yourself is not just an internal dialogue, it is a command, a signal, a force that shapes how reality organizes itself around you. And once you understand that, you cannot unknow it. So the only question that remains is this: what are you going to command? Will you continue to see yourself as someone who is waiting, hoping, reacting? Or will you step into something far more dangerous, someone who defines, someone who decides, someone who moves through the world not as a participant, but as a force? Because the truth is, the world has always been rearranging itself around everyone all the time. The difference is, most people are unconsciously telling it what to do through their fears, through their doubts, through their limitations. But now you have a choice to do it consciously, to shape it intentionally, to become so internally aligned, so unwavering in your identity that the external world has no option but to follow your lead. And when you reach that point, you'll realize something that changes everything. It was never about controlling the world. It was about controlling the version of yourself that the world responds to, because once that is mastered, the rest becomes inevitable, and the world, it doesn't resist you anymore, it recognizes you.